Well, hello, welcome to this episode of About Time. I'm Chris Nichols, and this is the series two, in fact, where I get to talk to old friends and colleagues and people who've influenced and inspired me along the way. And I'm delighted that my guest for this one is an old pal, Peter Shepherd. Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here and a bit fascinated by what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll find out.
Yeah.
And maybe we will. This could be the one. Um, so, what my kitchen fitter said that to me. He said, I've been doing this for 25 years. He said, you never know, this could be the one to get right. So, how, I mean, I know you do loads of things and you've got a doctorate and you're a guitarist and you do all kinds of things. I mean, how do you introduce yourself?
Oh, well, I mean, it depends who I'm talking to, of course, but professionally, I suppose I'm an organization consultant, I'm really, I think maybe a bit like you, where I'm at that point of really sort of experimenting with things that don't involve being a consultant as well. Yeah, I do football refereeing. I've got a little job driving kids to school. I'm a dad, and I suppose I'm 61 years old, and I want to do lots of things with whatever time remains to me, and not all of them involve being a consultant, but yeah,
Yeah. But some of them might.
some of them might. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking as we started, like when did we meet? And I know it was at Ashridge Consulting, but I have no sense of was it 20 years ago or 10 years ago? And when did you join? When did you join?
So in 2005, and I
Oh my
remember
God.
that from go, go
Okay,
on.
it's 20 years ago. It's 20
Yeah,
years ago.
well, yeah, exactly
Hmm.
20 years ago, and probably it was about this time of year as well, I think. And
Yeah.
I was previously I was working for a research institute in my hometown called Roffey Park, and
Ah, yes.
Karen Vanstone and Bruno Dalbiez, our former colleagues, saw me at an appreciative inquiry conference, and I think they had just won a big bit of work with a telecoms company, and
Okay. Yeah.
we're looking to resource it, and I was looking to move on from what I was doing into something else, and I was really kind of delighted by the idea of joining Ashridge Consulting, which was such a rare thing, it seemed to me. It still does actually now.
I think it's even rarer now.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's how I came to join,
Uh,
and I was there for 5 years.
right.
Yeah, which is about standard for me.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. So you worked in Ashford Consulting in the Ina Smith years? Was she the
That's right.
leader at the time? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had a different boss. I think Ina was my boss. In fact, she said to me, and I said this at there was a when she passed away, there was a tree planting at Ashridge for her
Mm.
in memory of her, and I'll never forget. She said to me when she offered me the job, she said it was kind of like touch and go because of the tie I was wearing, and I had, I had worn this tie. I don't know if you remember the newsreader Peter Snow. At that time, used to wear quite sort of like not risky ties, but quite colourful and quite
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interestingly different ties. And I thought, well, I'll try and be interestingly different. But apparently, it nearly cost me the job at Attridge Consulting. But anyway, I made it, and that's how we met.
Uh, is that because it was an interestingly different tie, or because it was a tie?
Well, possibly both. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that story. Um, yeah, I don't recall seeing many people in ties in Ashford Consulting, including you. You see, so,
No, well, I jettisoned it, after the interview, of course, because I
yeah,
realised
yeah,
I'd gone astray before I'd even.
yeah. Oh, no, that's so funny. So, uh, what kind of consulting do you do then? You've already mentioned appreciative inquiry, but I mean, you do lots of things, but it's within, I suppose, within a tradition.
Yeah, I mean, I think appreciative inquiry was a sort of a staging post for me, and actually, from from recognizing that the discourse could be a bit deficit oriented and, be refreshing to think in other ways, I came to not exactly critique that point of view, but to realize its incompleteness, and sort of went to the other side almost. And, I became interested in psychoanalysis and systems thinking, and, how organizations can get in their own way sometimes. But super interested in how how kind of useless blame is, and
Right.
uh, you know, so often you encounter this sort of thing where you know you're called in because a bunch of people think that they get it, and they think that there's another bunch of people who don't get it, and if there's some kind of conversion process, or then everything will be fine. So anyway, the kind of consulting I do really mostly is group dynamics, and it's I, I'm very interested in the connection between top team dynamics, organizational mood, and business performance, because I see those three things as sort of intimately linked. And
Yeah.
I don't think top teams are always in a position to appreciate just how influential they are, how they kind of, to borrow a quote from an educationalist called Chaim Ginott, how they make the weather for everyone else. It's often sort of like, it's often difficult for them to really appreciate that in the day to day. And yet I think how a leadership team's collective leadership is received is so influential for the wider system. So that's the kind of consulting I do. And like I say, I come at it from a systems psychodynamic perspective, and that for me has been super refreshing. And because I'm able to latterly draw on my own research and my own sort of validated and rigorous critiqued experience, that feels very positive to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And was your research, that was like post Ashridge Consulting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because so did you stop consulting to do the research, or were you part time and doing? Yeah,
Well,
you know what I'm asking.
yeah, I
Yes.
think so. Yeah. Well, briefly,
Yeah.
my journey after we parted ways, when I left Ashridge,
Yeah.
was I went to work for the Red Cross in Geneva, where I was leading a sort of people management project, and then came home to the UK and worked for London Business School. And I was pretty determined to go freelance, but I hadn't been in the market for a while, and I wasn't sure about my own business development skills. So I took a sort of a business development role at London Business School, and encountered in the course of that, won some work with a management consultancy. And I thought, well, I've always been interested in really working with professional services for reasons I can go into later. But
Yeah.
I won this piece of work, and I kept looking around for somebody to deliver it, and I kept finding sort of everybody who I met, had some. There was some reason why I didn't want to appoint them to the role, and I thought, well, actually, own up, Peter. It's because you want to do it. So on the basis of that, I went freelance, and I delivered this development program for the partners of this management consulting firm for about 5 years. And I realized,
Wow. Okay.
I mean, amongst other things, but that was my main.
Yeah.
And I realized that here was a great opportunity, because for years I'd sort of, I mean, if I'm honest with you, Chris, I think I'd wanted the status of having a doctorate. But I didn't really have a question that I was, burning question to answer. So I'd put it on the back burner. And then, I really started to become interested in these people and how they functioned outside of the kind of the framework of a leadership development program. What's going on for them in the day to day, and how does it all work? And I've been really influenced by not only by psychology, but also by sociology, and particularly the Chicago School of Sociologists, people like Studs Terkel and White, and all these, these people who are kind of like doing organizational ethnography before well, before it was called that, really. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, I'm rambling rather, but the thing was, I thought, here is a chance to do the project of my dreams, which is to be an organizational anthropologist on the ground with these people, with no sort of like super focused research question, but rather, how does this work? How does it happen? And how does it, given that I was studying system psychodynamics, how does it, what's the influence of the unconscious here? How does this system defend itself against anxiety? What characteristic defenses, can be identified? What's their effect? How does that affect group dynamics and so on? So yeah, long answer, but that's what I got up to. And your question was actually, did I do it alongside? I did it alongside consulting because, not a person of independent means. I needed to pay my way and what have you. So an intensely busy time, and then I actually got to do my data analysis during COVID, which was a blessing in a way. I mean, I know.
That's handy.
Well, I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? Because COVID was so awful for so many people.
Yeah.
And yet it was, some aspects of it were lucky for me because I had a lot of
Yeah.
time to spend with my data and nothing much better to do. So,
yeah. And you did the doctorate at one of the TAVIs, but I think it wasn't the Institute of Human Relations. It was
that's
the
right. It's the clinic.
the trust, the
Yeah.
clinic.
So it's a functioning NHS trust, and famous for kind of some controversies around gender reassignment. But I was studying with certainly the research methodology piece with sort of social workers and people working in psychiatric units of prisons, and it was a very rich mix of and family therapists, which was very influential on me. It's a very rich mix of people who were my fellow students, not just people sort of interested in organizational psychology, but people who were sort of clinically practicing. And I had for quite a while felt at Ashridge actually and beyond, I had felt, well, look, if I'm going to be intervening in the sort of the the dynamics of a system, I feel like I want to be not a clinician, but I feel like I want to be clinically aware.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I suppose that was a similar reasoning for me when I did the psychosynthesis psychotherapy training,
Right.
largely because I thought, well, the sort of stuff you do at Ashridge as a coach and a feedback giver takes you so far,
Yeah.
and being aware a bit more of some of the depth stuff is useful. I didn't do UKCP in the end. I didn't do my hours.
Yeah.
Just having 3 years of being in that mix and knowing what to look for and having those people as colleagues was enough. I was never going to
Right.
practice clinically. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
super enriching, and also kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sure you found. I'm confident that you found. Being able to understand yourself and the client as a system, and therefore your own influence. What you bring, and recognize when you're being helpful, and other times when you're working through your own shabizzle. It's kind of necessary, I think, to be a responsible practitioner. I mean, it is always a work in progress. Nobody kind of like gets there, but these kind of experiences probably
Yeah.
help. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I naively, even when I started Amok, I thought, oh well, I kind of know this stuff. I'm going to finishing school, and psychotherapy. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I'm mostly okay. That's got absolutely taken to bits,
Yeah.
yeah, and I thought, oh, actually, didn't know anything about myself. Actually.
Yeah. No, me
Yeah,
too. And it was actually
yeah,
years and years ago. I was working for the Arts Council, and I was sort of I was probably I don't know 30, 31, 32 maybe years old, and it honestly, Chris, it was sort of like one or two people pointing out to me that not everybody found me as charming as I did. That really sort of set me off on this journey at all. It was, and then I began to think, because I lived quite a lot of my life, kind of either sort of super confident or super anxious, and it was quite, up and down. And I really sort of thought, I don't think I came with a manual, or if I came with a manual, I didn't read it. So I'm not sure how this thing works, and I need to function as an adult, and that was, I mean, honestly, that was part of my interest. So much as I do enjoy helping other people, I also sort of felt like I was a bit of a liability to myself.
So can we dig into the doctorate a bit more, just to say about
Yeah, sure.
yeah, what you did, what the work was, and what you found?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I studied a group of partners in a management consulting firm for, well, I was originally intending to do it for about 6 to 9 months. And, like I said, my research question originally was, what's happening here? How does it work? Um,
Mm,
but in the middle, well, so that was in 2018. And as 2018 drew to a close, what had been a good year for the industry and a good year for this particular firm um, sort of changed because the market changed and leads were much more difficult for the partners to come by. And
mm,
so instead of leaving as I had intended, I changed my plans because I thought this moment of inflection is actually, in a way, what I've been waiting for to make sense of this research. Because the question then emerged, like, how does this group function in a downturn? What's
yes.
this moment of inflection between abundance and scarcity became really, really interesting. So that's what I ended up studying, and I think what I found in short was that uh, the top team dynamic can be an opportunity, and it can be problematic. It can be a source of
Mm.
advantage and differentiation, or it can be um, a bit of a liability. And if quite benign market conditions um, uh, have some underlying sort of fissures and minor cracks, then difficult market conditions can really open those up. And you get this kind of, I used in my research this idea of a sort of centrifugal group dynamic, whereby
Okay. Mm.
people are under intense pressure. They start to behave as if they're under attack. That has a divisive effect on the group dynamic. It turns into a sort of like game of survival, and sense of optimism and their sense of proportionality. Are the casualties of this, and that can set in train a sort of vicious circle. And I called it centrifugal because essentially it drives people apart. And
Right.
people become suspicious of one another, or they make unhelpful comparisons. And Chris is doing a bit better than me. I better up my game. Yeah, and data-free sort of paranoid fantasies can set.
That's a beautiful phrase. Data-free paranoid fantasies.
Yeah. Well,
What's one of those?
what a data-free paranoid fantasy? Well, I don't know. I just sort of made it up, but I suppose it's like, well, I mean, to make it concrete, right? It's
Yeah.
actually in a partnership, people won't necessarily know each other's financials and how they're doing against a target. So I might make an assumption that you're meeting your target and I'm not. So I think, there's two things going to happen. One is I'm pretty sure I'm not going to start sharing leads with Chris or bringing him in on my, my business development opportunities. And second is, I'm going to up my game. And so you get this sort of like runaway escalation where people are working harder and harder because they don't actually know how each other are doing. And of course, in a way that fuels the system. So anxiety is not just an outcome, but it's also a sort of like an input as well. But at the same time, it's not sustainable from the point of view of people's well-being and individual and organizational health it's difficult for it to function like that. So, I mean, I found that in extremis, but I also found that, when people were able to treat emotions particularly as useful data rather than something to be frightened of or conceal or be ashamed of, and when they were able to lean into their own discomfort and create space for reflection and working through things that they had previously worked around, as it were, then actually, there's every reason to think that that capability can be a superpower, because partly because not many people do it, and it is difficult and it's uncomfortable, but also because the juniors in a firm like that really feel the difference.
Yeah.
If the juniors are looking up into the system and thinking, that the partner group is not a place of safety or security, they're not, offering containment either to each other or to the wider system, then of course they don't feel safe, and that has an effect on morale, an effect on retention. So I mean, I sort of found that I'm actually giving a presentation on the research tomorrow in France. I it's that I'm really emphasizing, that look, every top team has got a top team dynamic. You can't not have one. Consciously, is yours, do you conceive of yours as more problematic? Do you conceive of it as an opportunity? If it's going great, then what are you putting in place to make sure that it remains great? If you're concerned about it, if it is difficult, then what appetite have you got for working through those difficulties together to get to probably a slightly, fiercer, more real place? So I'm not talking about offering sort of salves of great comfort and bonhomie. I'm talking about actually being quite rigorous in how we speak to each other, but with the intention that we spend more time in reality and less time in sort of delusion and fantasy, really.
Yes. Yeah. God, I'm just thinking, I mean, this is like so relevant to, like, I'm just thinking about the university sector. I mentioned to you that
Yeah.
I work now on the TMP, which is the top management program. It's basically people who are in line to become vice chancellors or deputy vice chancellors or provosts. And there's barely a university in the land, or probably in the world, that's not got this same shift, perceived shift towards scarcity. You know, well, yeah, and it's not just perceived. I mean, lots of them, it's real hardship now,
Yeah.
and political hostility in some places.
Yeah.
And the exec team, who are not often not put together like a corporate exec team. They're there because they hold certain roles, what have you. Um, they have to lead this damn thing.
Yeah.
And the stuff you're talking about sounds, may have to get you to come talk on the TMP, Peter.
Yeah.
um,
I'm totally up for it. I
yeah,
mean, I think that,
yeah,
just somebody said to me once when I was speaking about my research, what's the sort of, I think you might have been there actually, Chris, but it was, I think the question was, if there's one sort of skill that you'd like people to be able to acquire. And I think my answer was, to be able to do politics in the open, which is really, really difficult. But I remember from, way back at Roffey Park and early days of Ashridge running learning sets. And you know how when you run a learning set and somebody will come up to you sort of sotto voce or between meetings or whatever and make some comment about the group or somebody in the group, and your counsel, of course, is to say, well, I think you need to bring that to the group, like that. You can't like just give it to me, or we're going to resolve it offline. That's not okay. We have to bring it to the group. And I think that's true of leadership teams as well, that however difficult, we have to bring it to the group and work through it, and crank open those spaces for the discomfort and keep them open, and know that actually, have the confidence, I suppose, to feel that it's going to get us to a better place.
yeah. Mm. That's fantastic stuff. It's so important, and so so now, like it's needed right now.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
how 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 does somebody come to be Peter Shepherd doing this kind of work? I mean, do you come from a family of organisational consultants, or
well,
I mean, how what's your background to come to be doing this now?
well, I
Yeah.
mean, a few things really. So I come from a large family. So I come from a large Catholic family. So I'm number 6 of 10. My dad
Oh
was a
wow.
teacher.
Okay.
My dad was a craft, and it began as a craft and technical drawing teacher, and then also did an open university degree in geography, and also taught geography as well. And,
Okay. Yeah.
I went to the Jesuit boarding school that he taught at. So I was born in Surrey, but then we relocated to Lancashire, and I went to this Jesuit boarding school. So early experiences of group dynamics in a family, group dynamics at quite a tough school in many ways. Um,
Mm.
kind of left me a bit fascinated and appalled in some cases, actually.
Yeah.
About how groups behave, and really trying to understand it, which I think is probably using the organ that has always been my defense as a human being, is to sort of like, if I can consume it through the intellect, then I can cope with it. Which has an up and a downside, as you can imagine. So then I worked in the theatre for after doing going to boarding school. I was on to do film studies at Stirling, but I didn't quite make the grades. And my mum made it clear that I was leaving home, and come what may. And off I went to teach what was then a teacher training college in Leeds, and I did a drama degree.
Oh.
And I think it was sort of
So
uh,
is this the organisation that became Leeds Beckett, or is this something else? I mean,
Leeds Trinity, so pretty similar
Leeds
to Leeds.
Trinity.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
Okay.
called Trinity in All Saints at that point. And there
Right.
was the college, and then there was a nunnery next door called the Little Sisters of the Poor, and
Right.
it was quite a sort of Catholic enclave in a way, because it was also Catholic. So I'd gone to Catholic boarding school. It was a Catholic teacher training college, and had a fantastic time there. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you my whole life story. Your question was, so how did I come to do it? So so I did drama, and then but basically I worked at different theatres, and I became more in kind of I took on management roles and became interested in management and leadership, and then went to work for the Arts Council, where the lottery had just begun, and we as the Arts Council were,
Right. Yeah.
distributing money from the lottery into different arts projects. And I became three main things happened to me there that were quite formative. One was I noticed how money that was going into the arts was sort of advantaging the already advantaged. That was
Right.
politically
Yeah.
thing. That was sort of okay. Then there was the lottery itself, which was sort of handing out big sums of money. Now, politically, who to? That's a question. But also, irrespective of that, handing out big sums of money to people who had no experience of managing capital projects. So you might be running an art centre that's got a turnover of X, and then suddenly, you've got a capital project that's X to the factor 20. And what managerial capacity building needs to go on in order for that to be viable. So that was another interesting topic. And anyway, by hook or by crook, I was responsible for two main things when I was there. One was a positive action leadership program to understand differently the career trajectories of black and minority ethnic, we would have called it in those days,
Okay. Right.
leaders in the arts, because they didn't necessarily conform to the sort of European thing was, you have an arts administrator and you have an artistic director. That would be a kind of thing. Whereas, in other cultural contexts, that wasn't quite so split. So that was one thing. And the other thing was I had always been a shop steward from the earliest days in my, I'm quite left wing, and I'd always been interested in representation and solidarity and these kinds of issues. And I was the chair of the trade union at the Arts Council when, in '97, Labour won the election. Tony Blair won the election. Jerry Robinson was appointed chairman of the Arts Council. His decree was that this, perceived as sort of bloated and self-interested bureaucracy spaffing out money to its mates in the high arts, needed reform. And, the leaders of the Arts Council hadn't really led this kind of profound organizational change before. I was, meanwhile, embarked on a master's in organizational development at Roffey Park. So, as chair of the
Oh,
union,
yeah.
I said,
Okay.
rather opportunistically, I said, look, I'm doing this degree, and I'd love it if you just appointed me full time to the role that's taking most of my time anyway, which is the sort of organizational change and liaison. And a very inspirational and, in my view, enlightened head of finance said yes. And then so I did that for a while, and then transitioned into working at Roffey Park, where I'd studied, and being a tutor on sort of leadership and personal development programs, and that's anyway. Sorry, I'm very old, so that's a long answer because it's been quite a long life, So.
Fascinating, though, isn't it? How we end up doing what we're doing and what influences along the way
Yeah,
that
dead right.
cause us to
How about
do
you?
it. Well, um, most things that happen to me happen by accident. So so I was in government, civil service, because that was a job you could apply for from a deck chair in Torquay. I needed a job in London, but I didn't want to go to London to apply for it. So yeah, so so I was busy being a beach bum, and Claire persuaded me that I should get a job in London, so I did, and I ended up as bag carrier to Sir Humphrey. So if you think Bernard on Yes Minister, I was the bag carrier to Sir Peter Gregson for a while. And I did all the normal fast stream civil service stuff. It was a real eye opener to be, on writing the notes of cabinet committees, or which are generally written before the meeting and then used to steer the
Right,
meeting and things.
right,
Yeah, and
right.
then you change the notes if you need
Yeah,
to. Um, and you know, um, by that I ended up privatizing stuff because it was the Thatcher years.
yeah.
And I privatized myself into the energy business, and had a very short stay in the nuclear power company before Price Waterhouse picked me up, and I went around the world, 50 odd countries, advising governments. And that's how I got into consulting, was Price
Mm,
Waterhouse and privatization.
mm,
Very different kind of consulting. But
mm.
I, like you, that is probably most where I started to see the underbelly and the dark side of, I have a tendency to fall in love with organizations. And, if you'd, Philip always says, if in the old days, if you cut through me, you would have found Ashridge. Well, back in the day, if you cut through me, you would have found, Pricewaterhouse blue spots in my blood.
Right.
Until I saw enough of the shadow of that
Mm,
to know it's
mm,
not all
mm.
partnership. And sweetness and light.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Oh, okay.
So it's actually quite a similar story in
Mm,
some ways.
mm,
And then for
mm.
me, um, I arrived at Ashridge largely by accident, mainly because I remembered going there on my MBA and liking it. I did an
Right.
MBA at City, and we had a
Right.
study weekend at Ashridge, and I saw a job. I thought
Yeah.
it was a really good place. I'd like to work there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in those days, getting to work there was sort of like, like going in concentric or decreasing circles until you got closer and closer to this thing called a job. And it was quite hippie-ish, wasn't it? And it's kind of, well, come along, hang out, see, who likes you, who you like, see what's going on, da da da.
Yeah. Well, you see, I joined the college, so mine was much less hippie-like because I didn't join consulting. I
Okay.
joined I joined Ashridge College. I migrated to consulting after I'd been on the Ashridge Management Committee.
Yeah.
A different story. And
Mm.
um, so mine was a very formal interview, but no tie in my case. Um,
Mm.
but I had to be interviewed by people, and then I had to make a presentation to,
Mm.
as if I was running an
Mm.
class, kind of Ashridge exec ed class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and they gathered together whichever faculty happened to be willing and free, and
yeah,
yeah, and they either like you or they didn't. Oh, that was about as
yeah,
scientific as it got, I think.
yeah, yeah. Trial by ducking.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. So, Peter, I'm conscious that we're on about 35 minutes, and I don't want to stop without we've got a couple of things that we've talked about in the past that
Mm,
it's really easy to knacker yourself completely doing this work and be, I called it a sacrificial anode. And
mm,
I'm
mm,
really conscious I've worn myself ragged at
mm,
times. Um,
mm,
yeah. And, we both had our health scares because of this kind of thing, or that and genetics. You know,
mm.
I just wondered if you've got any observations at this point in life about like wisdom for younger consultants, or any observations for anybody anywhere from it all.
Well, I mean, I think certainly, I think being in it in some form of analysis or therapy, and just treating that as part of the work, and
Uh,
developing your sort of self-care regimens. So I
yeah.
profoundly believe
Hmm.
in exercise. I profoundly believe in kind of sprints and rests after sprints, and
Mm,
you
yeah.
know yeah, you were going to come in, so go on.
No, I was just. Well, actually, I think I was just agreeing with you, to
Oh,
be
okay.
honest. But is the therapy more than supervision? Because I think almost everybody would go, yeah, you need to make sure you're getting some good supervision. But I thought I heard you actually uh, maybe arguing
Oh
for
no,
something a
yeah,
bit more.
I'm making a case for being in therapy and supervision. So I think supervision, what I bring to supervision tends to be a bit like action learning. There's this case I'm
Yeah.
working on. You're familiar enough with me, Chris, now to know that actually, there's a bit of an entanglement between me and it, and I
Mm,
could do help unpicking the knot. So it's quite specific. Whereas, I think in therapy, um, it's more. I'm learning how to live my life as me, given everything that's happened and given everything that I'm dealing with and given everything, da da da. And and I think the two complement each other. But I think that in my case, I wouldn't like to say that because I'm doing supervision, that I'm sort of like covering all the bases, and
yeah.
therefore I'm sort of safe practitioner. I don't believe that. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's an important point because I learned a lot from being in therapy for 3 years, but I'm not now.
mm,
And it makes me think, And at this inflection point in later life, wonder if I should.
mm,
Yeah,
But it is also
yeah.
possible to get sick of therapy. I mean, that's the sort of like, you know, I,
There is that too. Yeah,
well, I mean, you can only inquire into yourself so far, before you get bored of it as well. So, I don't mind like picking that up and then dropping it and then picking it up and dropping it. I've done that lots of times.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Being bored, being bored of myself is quite a good subject for therapy. That's
well, well, I, di-
quite-
I just think there's a kind of intensity to the work that we do, which has is great and liberating in some. You go into things in enormous depth, and there's a sort of clearly there's a sort of shadow side to it.
yeah,
I was going through my LinkedIn contacts the other day, and and sort of thinking, because it was like I was intending to clean the list, and I thought, it was like a sort of history of my professional.
yeah,
And there was surprising the number of people who I just thought, well, that's so in the past, that's so. And do you know what I mean? That's kind of like to definitely to let go.
yeah, yeah. So we're very close to our 40 or 40 odd minutes, but I have to ask you. So what next? What's your juicy edge for you?
Well, so I really want to have this portfolio where I'm really not depending for all my sort of identity needs and income and everything else on just on consulting. It's maybe there was a period when I could cope with that intensity, but actually as you say, at some cost. And having nearly lost your life, it puts a different perspective on what you want the rest of it to be like. So what next for me is maintaining that mix and not everything being about organizations or psychology or that's very important to me. But that said, I'm super interested in the relationship between power and anxiety, and I've been asked or selected, I think would be a fairer say, selected as amongst a group of people to write a book chapter, something led by the Tavistock, on the politics of organizational anxiety. So
sounds
that's
great.
something I'm really interested in. And yeah, in terms of what next, more interesting stuff in the consulting world. But I'm not crazy about it being 21 days a month. That's it's a bit. Well, certainly 21 client facing days a month is too much for me now. I can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's more like my year actually now than my
Well, there you go.
than
Yeah,
my month. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But of course, I do take some of the share of running Game Shift,
Yeah,
which which is a different kind of different kind of burden, but it
yeah.
still
But
occupies time. Yeah,
yeah, and we're designed for sort of episodic stress, but chronic stress, just as we know, takes its toll. And I just feel like I don't want to be chronically stressed. It's not what I want for my life.
good for you. Yeah, good for you. And I I can see so many places that need to know about the work you did on the doctorate. I hope that that's is written up somewhere, and that maybe we can tempt you to come and talk to a couple of groups about it, because there's some really rich stuff in there, Peter. So
Oh well, thank you, and
yeah,
thank you for being interested in it. I mean, and that to me
yeah,
is weird, Chris, actually, because I don't find that stressful. I love talking
yeah,
about it. It's very interesting to me, and where it goes from here, and what I sort of like, what I didn't cover in the doctorate, but I would like to understand more deeply now. And I mean,
yeah.
haven't lost my appetite for reading really difficult to understand books, and just trying to make a little bit of sense of them, and trying to then bring that into
Yeah,
my practice and my understanding, whether it's about sort of like
yeah,
topics like concealment or shame or burnout or I'm writing about all kinds of different things, and influenced by. I was very lucky to have a supervisor on the doctorate who introduced me to sort of like Foucault and Judith Butler and Nicholas Rosen, all these books. But you buy them and you pick them up and you think, I think I need a long time to understand what's happening in this. Anyway, so what next for me is more study, some work, um, you know, based on my research, and some living. Chris, before it's all over, we're only going to get one shot
brilliant,
at it.
Peter. Let me just say thank you to listeners, then I will come back and thank you again for being part of it. So, everybody, thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of About Time. You will notice, as ever, links backwards and forwards to other episodes. So, my invitation is, please do dig into the show notes. I do my best to point out where some of the links may be, but you'll find your own. Peter, thank you so much for being willing to do this. It's been a pleasure to see you again after all this time. Here's to
Likewise.
more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Chris. It's been my pleasure too.
Great to see you. Cheers, Peter. Bye now.
Cheers. Bye.